for tuning in today. You're watching Life Skills, Cooking Basics for Teens. I'm Stacy, the Teen Services Library Assistant at the Goffstown Public Library. So today we are cooking up a creamy stovetop macaroni and cheese, better than you can get out of any box. By the end of this video, you're going to learn about reading a recipe and some tips on reading a recipe. You're also going to be introduced to some kitchen tools that maybe you haven't seen before, and you're going to learn 2 fancy words in our kitchen vocabulary. So let's get started. First, we're going to wash our hands, and then we're going to get on to the ingredient list.
For our ingredients, we'll need sour cream, cheddar cheese, Elbows macaroni, salt, flour, milk, butter, and ground mustard. The ground mustard is optional.
Hands are washed. Now you know the ingredients, so let's move on to the tools that you're going to need to make this macaroni and cheese today.
A medium saucepan, a colander, a grater, liquid measuring cup, dry measuring cups and spoons, medium saucepan.
Okay, whenever I'm working on a recipe, I like to get all my ingredients measured out and ready first. So that's what we're going to do right now. Make sure you have a clean counter. You can rest your stuff on a clean counter, on a plate, on a cutting board, wherever. Most of it's going to stay in measuring cups that we use, but some things like our butter will just be laying on the counter or a cutting board. So what we're going to do first is we're going to measure out our butter. Now, your stick of butter at home might have these little measuring marks on the wrapper itself. The butter that I use does not. So I just ripped this right off of the carton that it came in, and I'm going to use this to measure 2 tablespoons, so right here, of butter. So I'm going to take my butter, and I'm going to take my little measuring tool right here. You see, I'm going to put it down, and all I'm going to do is take a knife, and I'm going to measure out the 2 tablespoons of butter, okay? And I'm all done with the butter, so I can put it aside. After the butter, I'm going to grate my cheese. Now, you definitely can use bag cheese. That's perfectly fine if that's what you have at your house. The thing with fresh cheese that's not in a bag, sometimes they put some extra ingredients to just make sure that the cheese doesn't cake while it's sitting in the bag together. So sometimes that doesn't lend itself to melting well, so that's why I like to pre-grate cheese, but you definitely can go ahead and use the bag cheese. We're gonna want 2 cups of any types of cheese that you wanna use. I'm using cheddar cheese today. So this is my cheese grater. I'm gonna use the wide side. There's a finer side for a grate, but I'm actually gonna use the wider side of grate. And I'm just gonna take it and up and down motion. You'll see my cheese is falling in here. And I'm just gonna grate as much as I think might be 2 cups, and then we're going to measure it. So grate along. It shouldn't take long, plus it's a great workout. Don't worry about the larger chunks. I have large chunks right there. I'm gonna keep those like that. That doesn't bother me. So let's see. I'm gonna grate this whole side. Watch your fingers, okay? Pull out everything inside there. All right. This right here is my measuring items. This is a dry measuring cup, okay? 1 cup. You use this for dry ingredients, so solids. This would be considered that. You would not use these types of measuring for liquids. That's a different type of measuring cup. If you want accuracy, you want to make sure you use the proper tools for the job. So I'm gonna fit some of my cheese in here. And I'm gonna say that that's probably 1 cup. And remember, I said I want 2 cups. So I'm just gonna knock that over. I'm gonna lay that out there. Honestly, for cheese, if you go a little over, that's not a bad thing. All right, so my 2 cups of cheese right on the side there, okay? All right. This remaining cheese right here, I'm just gonna put it on my plastic wrap for the moment. And I'll wrap it in because later on I'm probably just going to grate up this whole thing anyway so that we can use it for nachos or tacos or anything else during the week. All right. We're going to now move on to measuring our salt. Here is my container of salt right here, and we're going to use measuring spoons for that, and these are my measuring spoons. Okay, again, measuring spoons for measuring some dry ingredients out, but measuring spoons can also be used for liquid. So if you were making cookies like vanilla extract or something like that, you can use these ones for liquid. Okay, so for our salt, we need a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So on your teaspoon, you should have a number as well as an abbreviation. Mine has a 1/2 and then the abbreviation TSP. So that's for a teaspoon, okay? Here's my salt right here. I'm just gonna take my lid right off, bring this up on the side, and I have my 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And I'm gonna just lay it right on my cutting board right there. And it's all set to go. Now, if you needed to use your 1/2 teaspoon again, it might be a good idea to have small little bowls like this, or something else that you could put your ingredients in so that you can just dump it later. As you get better, you could just take out the big ingredients like this and have them ready, and then just use your spoons one at a time to add your stuff to your recipe. So when we're actually going to do that with the flour today. The next thing that I'm going to measure out, and this is an optional ingredient, this is ground mustard. Now I think it gives just a little bit of a sweet flavor to the mac and cheese, so I use ground mustard in my mac and cheese, but this is optional, so you do not have to use it, but I'm going to include it today. And we would use just 1/4 of a teaspoon. So again, another teaspoon. This one says 1/4. I'm going to take this right off. And I'm going to just lay my ground mustard right there, ready to go for my recipe. Let's move on to some liquid ingredients. We are going to need milk. That's what's going to make this nice and creamy along with the cheese. So this is a liquid measuring cup. I want to measure out 1 cup of milk. Now you can use whole milk, you can use 2% milk. I would not use skim milk or low-fat milk. It affects the creaminess of the mac and cheese. So my suggestion would be whole milk or 2%. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to measure it up to the 1 cup mark that's on here. Now, you probably remember from science class, right, that liquid kind of has like a little dome over the top. So I'm going to put this down and take a look at it and make sure that we are at the 1 cup, and we are. All right, and I'm done with my milk. So I'll put that off to the side. The last thing that we are going to measure out is our sour cream. Now this uses sour cream to give a little extra creaminess. And so for this, we're going to take a 1/4 cup, all right? So 1/4 cup of sour cream. I have that right here. I'm going to scoop and just make sure you're really pressing it in. So I want to press that down because I don't want air pockets. I want to have an actual measure of the 1/4 cup of sour cream. Okay, so pressing it down. It's a good idea. This is my rubber spatula, right? We're going to be using this, but this is going to help you in getting that sour cream and then getting it nice and smooth at the top, okay? So I just kind of smooth it out. Put it right on my board, cover up my sour cream, and now I'm done with that. All right, I have all of my ingredients ready to go for the recipe. Now let's talk about the recipe a little bit. Okay, so now our ingredients are all set, except for the one thing I forgot to talk about, the macaroni. So we're gonna get to the macaroni next, because you can't have macaroni and cheese without the pasta, right? But before we get to that, let's talk about a recipe. I think it is helpful when you're picking a recipe that you read through it first to make sure you have all those ingredients. If you don't have the ingredients that day, write them down on a shopping list so that you can make this dish another day. The other important thing about reading the recipe through is to make sure that you have time to actually do that recipe. I have had where I've not read the recipe, I get down to a spot and realize, oh my gosh, this needs to sit for 24 hours. I was gonna make this for dinner. I don't have 24 hours. So it's really important that you read through everything on that recipe, from the ingredients all the way down to that final step. The other important thing is once you decide that you want to make that recipe, still read it 2 times. Reading it through 2 times really cements in your mind the steps that you're going to take. Now your recipe is going to be right next to you while you're cooking, but it's important that you read through so that you really get a hang of what you're going to do and at what time you're going to do it. So now we're going to get on to cooking our macaroni. So we need to bring a medium-sized saucepan right here up to a boil. So I'm going to fill this saucepan about 3/4 of the way full, almost all the way. I know because I use this pan a lot that actually is about up to where these rivets are. So I'm going to fill water to these 2 spots, up to the level of these spots right here, and then I'm going to get it on my stovetop. Now, bringing it to a boil means you're going to heat up that water so that you have bubbles on the bottom of the pan, and those bubbles rise to the top, and as they break, what we call a rolling boil is when lots of bubbles are popping up and then they're breaking on the surface. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to bring a rolling boil. So let me go ahead and get water in my pan and get it on my stovetop. Okay, so my saucepan is on the burner. I'm setting it to high so that I can get this water up to a rolling boil. Then will be time to drop our pasta. Okay, now that our water is at our rolling boil, we're going to put our pasta in. Now this recipe calls for 8 ounces of pasta. Macaroni pasta usually comes in a 16-ounce box container. So I have that right here. So what we're just gonna do is put in half of this box. Any kind of pasta will do that's small. So if you have shells will do. Elbows, that macaroni will do. So it doesn't just have to be elbows, but that's typically what I like to use. All right, there we go. Once that's in there, we're gonna have to give it a stir with our rubber spatula, okay, to make sure our macaroni doesn't stick to each other. And then we're just gonna follow the package directions. We want it to come back up to that boil, and we wanna let it boil for about 8 minutes. Now, all macaroni is a little bit different depending on the brand. This brand, because I use it a lot, I know it takes about 8 minutes. So I'm gonna let this macaroni cook for 8 minutes, and then we're going to strain it with a colander, and I'll show you the colander when it's time for us to get the macaroni out of the water. So the best way to check and see if your macaroni is cooked is to just go ahead and take 1 or 2 pieces out. They are going to be hot. I'm going to give it a blow on it. There should be a tiny little bite to it. This pasta is ready to go. Okay, now it's time for us to drain our pasta. We are going to use this. It's called a colander, right? It has a bowl with these little holes in it, and it's going to hold our pasta inside and let all the water go out. So let me grab that with a pot holder. Keep your face back There's a lot of steam. You don't want to get burned. All right. We actually can just leave our pasta sitting in here until we need to put it in our recipe. And it will just cool off a little bit, and that's fine. So I'm just gonna leave it right in the sink like that. And let's get on with the recipe. Okay, so using the same medium saucepan that we used to cook the macaroni, we're gonna get onto our cheese sauce. So the first thing we're going to do is turn our burner on to medium. Now for mine, medium is about number 5 and number 4, so that's what I'm gonna put it on. And then I'm gonna take that 2 tablespoons of butter and I'm gonna drop it right into our pan. All right, rubber spatula is what we're gonna be using to mix everything. We want to melt our butter down. Now we are going to be making something called a roux, okay? And that is a fancy word, I know, a roux. All that means is that we're putting a mixture of fat and flour, and it's used to thicken sauces, okay? If your butter looks like it's melting too fast, in cooking we have to adjust our burners a little bit. Just turn it down. We don't want our butter turning brown, okay? So as that's melting, we're gonna grab our flour. Now this was the one I said we were going to just measure to at the time. So I have my flour, and we're gonna use 2 tablespoons of flour. Now I'm gonna really turn my butter down here. Okay, slide your spoon along the side of your carton of flour. 1 tablespoon in and 2 tablespoons in, okay? It's gonna form a little bit of a paste once we kind of mix it all together, and that's what we want, all right? This is the roux. We're just gonna cook that flour a little bit just to get out that flour taste. And like I said, it does. It looks a bit like a paste. You can see that, okay? So you don't need to do that for very long. It's gonna just turn a slight darker cream color. Get that flour cooked and bubbling. Okay. Now at this time is when I like to put my salt in. So my 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and it's also when I like to put my ground mustard in. So 1/4 teaspoon of ground mustard. And I'm just gonna mix that with my roux. So now with your burner at about number 5 or 4, again medium, we are going to take our 1 cup of milk, and we're going to slowly pour that into our roux. We are now making what's called a bechamel. A bechamel is a sauce that's basically a white sauce, a thick white sauce, and that's what we're going to do right now. Bechamel is a basic white sauce, and then you can add stuff to it like cheese to make it a cheese sauce or other things. All right, so there we go. It's gonna look a little lumpy at first, and that's okay. You're just gonna keep stirring and stirring and stirring to get those lumps and bumps out. And as you're doing that, it should be thickening, okay? So it might be a good time to turn your burner down to a little bit more of a low. We don't want to boil this. We don't want to burn this, okay? We just want to keep getting that flour, that roux mixed with our milk. You can see that it's getting thick because it's kind of coating. Okay. All right. Once it's starting to look smooth, and it's thickening. We're going to turn it down low, and now we're going to add to it still a little bit of flour there, so I'm going to put it low and I'm just going to really keep stirring. We don't want bits of flour. We want a nice smooth sauce. So turn it down low if you have to do that, just to get it mixed well. You can see even on the outside of my pan how thick it's getting. All right, that's looking good. We're gonna take our 1/4 cup of sour cream and we're gonna put it right into our sauce, okay? This is gonna add an extra cream factor. Mix that in. Once that's all mixed well, we're actually going to turn the heat right off. We don't need the heat on when we add our cheese. This will be warm enough that it will melt the cheese. That's looking pretty good right there. Nice and thick. You can kind of see it coats the back of the spatula. All right, I'm going to turn my burner off. And we're going to now add our cheese. The 2 cups of cheese goes right in. Okay. We're just going to keep stirring till it melts. And then we're on to our final step, which is to just add the macaroni. That's looking really good. Okay, our cheese sauce has all come together. All the cheese has melted. It's thick, it's creamy. Now is the time to test for seasoning though. So we're gonna take a spoon, a clean spoon, and we're just gonna dip it in our sauce. Now remember, it's going to be a little bit warm, so be careful. That's pretty good. I might add just a tiny bit of pepper. Right in there. Give it a stir. This might be the time that if you think you need more salt, you could add more salt to it. It's important to always taste your food. Final step. We're gonna bring over that macaroni and we're gonna put it right inside. So, here's the colander of that pasta or macaroni. I've been calling it both things. Put that right inside. Some on my floor. Hope you didn't see that. And all you have to do is give this a mix. Coat the elbows well. There we go. This is better than anything you're going to take out of that box. And we're done. Your macaroni and cheese is complete. All you need to do now is put it in a bowl and have some. So we have completed our macaroni and cheese. Can you believe it? Hopefully you found this video informative and not intimidating. The one thing I'll say about macaroni and cheese recipes, if you were to Google it, there's hundreds of them out there. And once you have a recipe that you really like, you can add things to it like chicken and vegetables to really elevate that macaroni and cheese and make it a complete meal. I would like to talk to you about 2 cookbooks that have macaroni and cheese recipes in them that are slightly different than the one I showed you today. So maybe you would like to give it a try. The other thing about these 2 cookbooks that is great is that they're specifically towards teens or young adults. And I think that that makes the ingredient list and the tools being used that much more accessible. The other thing is there's a wealth of knowledge. In these books, they have glossaries and vocab and kitchen tools and explain so many things that will just help you feel confident in the kitchen. The first book is the Healthy College Cookbook by Story Publishing. That is available as an ebook on our cloud library downloadable services, accessible to you with your Goffstown Public Library card. The second book is a physical cookbook that Goffstown Public Library owns. It's called Teens Cook, How to Cook What You Want to Eat. And that is by Megan and Jill Carle. That is a great cookbook. There is a macaroni and cheese, I think it's a baked one in there that you may want to try out, along with breakfast and dinner and snacks. So I hope you try both of these cookbooks. I hope you try this recipe. I hope you enjoyed this video. I haven't had lunch yet, so I might just try some macaroni and cheese. So thank you for cooking with me today. If you want to get some more of this great content, you have to subscribe to Goffstown Public Library's YouTube channel, so don't forget. I'll be back again next Tuesday with another recipe for you to enjoy. Happy cooking!